Welcome to the Fat Profits Workshop webinar hosted by David Thang, Head of Technical Analysis at Fat Profits. Crossing to David now. David, can you tell us a bit about what we can expect to learn from these wealth building workshops with Fat Profits?
Thanks, Kai. So basically, in relation to the workshops, they'll be run by myself, covering the technicals, and also Greg Smith, who is Head of Research. So essentially, we're going to run through the basics of share market investing. And in terms of fundamental analysis, this is what Greg will cover. And he's going to look through the importance of applying it correctly, and also in terms of the valuation process. In-house, we obviously use a bottom-up approach, but we'll discuss that in more detail, and the benefits of implementing a top-down investing framework, and why it's so important, especially in the current markets. In terms of portfolio management, that's also a key that we'll be covering. And towards the second half of the session is when I'll be covering the technical analysis session. And we're going to try and break it up into two sessions just to essentially give attendees a nice break. And we're going to go through the basics for the beginners, and then we're going to start going into more complex subject matters. And more importantly, it's all about putting theory to practice, and that's going to be done throughout the course of the day as well.
Now, can you tell us a bit about what clients can expect? Is this about what you will learn just on the day?
On the day, you're going to learn plenty. You're going to also receive plenty of literature. But what's important is the application to, real life examples, which is going to be very, very important. So we're going to apply that on a fundamental basis and also on a technical basis as well. So in terms of the workshops that we've conducted in New Zealand, we've had ad hoc questions from attendees, and they've basically been throwing stocks at us, sectors at us, and the beauty about it is that we can essentially go through it real time. Now, of course, in terms of support, attendees they'll essentially have access to us on a fortnightly basis, and we'll be running regular webinars to go through the content, structure, and really enhance that learning experience. And of course, plenty of questions. It's all about questions, all about interaction throughout the day, and it's quite an informal process, which is essentially what we're after.
And David, can you tell us a bit about fundamental investing? It's one of the topics we cover in some depth. What will be covered during this topic?
So in terms of fundamental analysis, it's essentially broken down into three components, and we're going to really break that down into the screening process of investment opportunities, how we essentially tackle that in-house, and one of the key things is intrinsic value, and it's something that's presented a lot in the media, and we're really going to go into that in a lot of detail.
And can you tell us a bit about the various methodologies that we'll drill down to as well?
And in terms of the methodology, there's essentially 6 key, ways of looking at the calculation process. The first is discounted cash flow. Then we've got price to earnings ratio, dividend discount modelling, which is very, very important, especially in relation to our Australian market. There's price to book value, price to free cash flow, and of course dividend yield. So dividend yield is used by many investors, and we're really going to hound in the 3 concepts there in a lot of detail, and really just providing a nice avenue for plenty of questions.
And you mentioned as well, David, that you'll be going through some real life case examples.
Yes, we have a number of examples to essentially showcase to attendees, and on the screen you'll see TPG Telecom, which is probably one of Fat Profits, one of the top, recommendations we've had over the past. It's a combination of fundamentals and technicals used for the initial entry there, around that 93-cent mark, and essentially down to our exiting point where we recommended members to sell and exit and essentially take profits.
And if we take a look at some of the details of that fundamental analysis, David, can you just explain in a bit more detail what will be covered?
Okay, so let's say, for example, if we're going back to the TPG Telecom example, we've got let's say, top performers. So TPG is essentially done over 1100% over the time. There's acquisitions during the process. And in terms of share price, overextension at roughly about 33 times earnings, and they're on screen yield of just 1%. And one of the things on the balance sheet is it's also rather attractive, but one other thing is obviously time will tell, and there's a lot of M&A activity on TPG, and of course it's commonly and widely used by a lot of retail consumers as well.
Now, David, we'll have a look at the technical analysis aspect of the day as well, which is your expertise, and we're covering that off in the second half of the day. What will be covered in that session?
So in terms of my session, I'm essentially trying to, actually I will condense 13 years of experience within the 3 hours, and we're going to really run through the basics of chart types, the different types of charts that I guess technical analysts use. And then we're going to run through Japanese candlesticks, which is I guess a form of analysis that I use on a day-to-day basis because it is very, very effective. And I'll essentially, I guess I'll demonstrate to attendees as to why it's so effective. And then we'll be covering support and resistance. Very, very simple. Anyone using technical analysis should know what support and resistance is, but the key thing is I'll basically show how I draw in my support and resistance lines and how that actually differs from how others actually draw it. And then we sort of move into strategy analytics. And it's not in terms of usage of indicators because they're actually backward looking. I'm actually going to show everyone a very, very powerful forecasting tool that I use and I've been using for a very, very long time. It works on a number of markets, number of time frames, and speaking about time frames, it's depending on the market you're looking at, people are actually analyzing the incorrect time frame, and that really leads to pretty bad investment, I guess, decisions. And last but not least is putting theory to practice, and that's when we go through a topic and then we actually look at the market. So the attendees actually choose a stock of their choice and we actually apply what we've just learned in class. So really to enhance the learning process.
Now, David, technical analysis is possibly not quite as widely used in the investment community. Why is that?
Very good question, and I'd say probably 90% of investors will use fundamental analysis and 10% that use technicals. Why? I'm not entirely sure. Now, I favor technicals mainly because a lot of the institutions that I've worked for, such as Goldman's or AMP Capital, there's always a team of technical analysts there. And one of the misconceptions is it's used only for short-term trading, which of course it can be. And a lot of the concepts that I will teach can be applied across short-term trading on the various different markets, and also, more importantly, for investors, more from a timing perspective in terms of managing their portfolios. Now, in terms of adoption, as I've sort of mentioned, it's in my opinion, it's very important using both fundamentals and technicals. Technicals for obviously timing your entry, and there are a lot of examples that I'll show in terms of key reversals in the market on stocks that you actually see way beforehand before the market actually, I wouldn't say collapse, but at least corrects by 15 to 20%. So being able to really see those clues is quite critical. And of course, last but not least, I'll go through the fact, is technical analysis an art form or science? And I guess you just have to attend the workshops to really see, the difference and how I sort of interpret that.
And from the perspective of a beginner, David, or someone with years of knowledge relating to the topic of technical analysis, what benefits will they gain from this session?
So I guess in terms of the sessions that we've conducted in New Zealand, we've had quite a vast array. Those that know nothing about technical analysis, and they've actually been able to gain a lot of knowledge, but also at the same time, there's probably a little too much knowledge there for a few hours, but that's what the webinars are for. They're going to have I guess 12 months worth of support, and really over 12 months of continuing to apply what we've gone through in the workshop. They're essentially going to be quite good in terms of technical analysts after that 12-month period. Now going to the second question in terms of experience, I wouldn't say traders, probably I'd say experienced investors that have used technical analysis. What's important is, I guess from my perspective, my approach to TA rather than what you would read on the internet or what you would learn from, say, the Technical Analyst Association. And our ultimate goal is really what you see on the chart right there, and that cluster zone of support, I've drawn that quite simply. Simply a rectangle there, but what's important is there's actually a lot of analysis that goes on in the background, and that's one of the things that I'll run through during the workshop step by step in terms of why that zone is of utter importance and why prices have actually turned from that level. And just for everyone's sake, that chart was actually taken pretty much today, so it's nice in real time, and that's also one of the things about the workshop. Everything we do will be in real time. We'll be looking at charts pretty much from a real-time perspective, and not just looking at the history of certain pattern formations. We're actually going to go through in terms of, okay, topics that we've learned, now where is the stock going to go? And we're actually going to run through some pretty bold predictions, and end of the day, that's what we're here, and yeah, that's essentially my part in terms of technical analysis.
David, thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing everyone at the Fat Profits workshops.
Thanks, Kai.